Russia has delivered a blunt message to Europe's biggest power. Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov, as reported, has warned that Germany's continued military backing for Ukraine effectively places it inside the conflict.
Right now, we are fighting the direct followers and descendants of those Nazis in the same composition. Merz openly says we will again be in charge in Europe. If you are so frank, well, be ready.
Moscow's position is clear. Arming Kyiv is no longer seen as indirect support, but active participation. The warning signals a sharp escalation in tone, with Russia drawing firmer lines on Western involvement.
Patience eventually snaps, and it is not for nothing that the president, shortly after the start of the special military operation, commenting on our relations with the West and Europe at one of the events, summed it up. The way it was before February 2022 will never be again.
Lavrov claims the West initially sought Russia's strategic defeat, but shifted narratives as battlefield realities evolved. Now, according to him, long-range Ukrainian strikes are being projected as turning points. Moscow views this as coordinated messaging, rather than ground reality. The re-emergence of the "Defeat Russia" slogan, he suggests, reflects renewed Western intent to weaken Moscow at a systemic level.
They openly announced first the strategic defeat that must be inflicted on Russia. Then, observing the situation on the line of combat contact, essentially on the front, they backed away from this rhetoric. Now, when Zelensky, constantly retreating in the Donbass and other areas of the front, when out of desperation, he switched to outright terrorist activities, and they see how many of his long-range weapons reach their targets, they have begun to PR this phase of what is happening as a turning point.
In one of the strongest assertions, Lavrov links Western rhetoric of decolonizing Russia to attempts at breaking the country apart. He references past instability after the Soviet collapse, claiming similar ambitions persist today. As per his remarks, such ideas are seen in Moscow as existential threats, crossing a red line that transforms geopolitical rivalry into a direct challenge to Russia's sovereignty.
Therefore, the slogan of inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia has reappeared. The slogan of the decolonization of Russia has appeared, which frankly implies the dismemberment of our country once again. The revival of those hopes that the West also harbored during the stage of the disappearance of the Soviet Union, watching as separatist movements appeared in the Far East and the Urals, not to mention the Caucasus, and cherishing the hope that everything would fall apart now and could be picked up piece by piece.
Lavrov also rejected Western-backed ceasefire proposals, describing them as strategic pauses designed to freeze the conflict without addressing Russia's concerns. Plans involving foreign troop deployments, he suggested, amount to ultimatums rather than negotiations. Moscow maintains that any settlement must reflect realities on the ground, signaling resistance to externally driven frameworks led by Europe or NATO powers.
In order to offer something to the world, we must win. The world is watching with great attention, some with bated breath, to see how this war, forced upon us by the West, will end, in response to which the President announced the start of the special military operation.
Outlining Russia's broader stance, Lavrov emphasized that national interests must be secured before any global alternative order can emerge. He pointed to growing cooperation with countries like China and India and platforms such as BRICS as part of a shifting power structure. His message indicates that Russia sees its path forward less tied to Europe and increasingly aligned with non-Western alliances.
For us to be an independent power, an independent civilization, for our borders to be reliably secured, so that no one even tries to think about advising us on how to organize our life inside Russia, and so that all the peoples of the Russian Federation continue to have their constitutionally guaranteed rights to education, to preserving their culture, traditions, and their religious beliefs.